The last thing we're going to do here is attach the strings, and we also have to get our tuning pegs on here as well. Your nut bone, we've got to notch some slots where the strings are going to go, and your little saddle might have to be adjusted, depends on the height of the strings after we put them on. I've made a little spacer for that nut slot, and if you want to just take that and just place it right up on the nut bone and just mark where those strings are going to be at. You can use this, and just that way we'll get our spacing how you want it. You can use one of these little flush trim saws. Same thing, you can put your thumb where it needs to go, and this might be a little easier. Just gotta be careful again not to go too deep. And you can get those maybe easier without scratching up some things. Okay, we also need to attach our tuning pegs. You can get these from the teacher here. And your 4 tuning pegs, you'll need a little screwdriver to undo the little screw at the top. So if you just take that screw out, and then the whole tuning peg will come apart, and you got to be careful not to lose some of these parts here. So this will just pop right off. And then there's a couple washers and spacers here you got to make sure you don't lose. And then this little part here will go in through the top, and then you'll put your little spacers on here. So you've got your little spacer here, and then a washer, and then tuning peg will just fit right back on, and then you can take your screw and screw that back on. And you don't want to go so tight that you can't turn the tuning peg, but you want to tighten it up enough that it has a little bit of tension while you're spinning it. So we'll get all 4 of those tuning pegs attached. Okay, we got the 4 tuning pegs attached. I've just put our saddle in here as well, just kind of rested it in there, and we're not going to glue the saddle in. That's got to be able to come out in case we need to make adjustments to that. And again, we can always adjust how deep our slots are on our nut. So we're ready to put the strings on, and come get the strings for me. It's just some tenor ukulele strings. And so each string has a little number on it. This one says number 1, and they're labeled on your packaging as well where the strings should go. So 2, 3 is the thicker one, and then 4. And so when you're holding the ukulele, again, your top string is that number 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1 is actually your bottom string here. So we kind of have this set up the same way that we're going to hold this ukulele when we're putting this. So we'll start off, if we can go number 4, so you can find that one. There it is. And the way that this bridge is going to work is we need to tie a knot in the very end of the string. So you can kind of undo it. Just remember, this is number 4. Tie a knot on the end, and because this is a pretty thin string, we're going to want to tie maybe a double knot or even a triple knot just on the end here. So I'm just going to tie a little knot. We've got plenty extra string, so it doesn't have to be perfectly on the end here, but just get it somewhere near the end. We can do some trimming later. And then I'm going to do like a double knot, because this sometimes needs to be a little thicker knot for these thin strings. Okay, so I've got my knot there, and then that is going to just be placed through the little slot, and then on the very end you've got this little notch right here on the back, and that's what that knot is going to fit into. So that's going to go in and then just get sucked in right there and then pulled tight. And then we'll take this, and we want this 4th string here to be attached to this close tuning peg right here, and you'll just place it through the little hole of the tuning peg. And then don't tighten this thing all the way, so don't pull this really tight already. We've got to give it some slack. And so I actually put my hand underneath and just kind of tilt it upwards like this. And that's probably enough slack that we're gonna need. And the way you're turning this tuning peg, you want this string to come on this part of the tuning peg around. So it's not gonna be turning this way on the outside, it's coming on the inside around. So let's get that slack again. And so that's pretty good on slack. And now I'm just gonna turn this tuning peg, and I want the direction that it's turning so that the string is coming around the inside, just like that. And then as you turn this, as it starts to get a little tighter, make sure it fits into your little slot of your nut that you did. And we don't want to over tighten. We're just kind of snugging it a little bit. You can start to hear the sound as we go. And again, don't get it fully tight yet. Just kind of place it on here, because we need to look at a few things. We're looking at the action height, that we might need to adjust the saddle, we might need to adjust the nut slot, and later on we can get the right tune and everything. So just place your strings on. So my next one, I'm gonna work my way down to string number 3 here. So find string number 3, and because this is a little bit thicker than usually, I just need to tie 1 knot in this one. I don't need to double knot it. So we're gonna do that same process. We're gonna tie a knot on the end and then go in here, and we'll go over to this tuning peg. So it'll come up, and again, it's gonna come over through the inside as it wraps around. Just tying a knot, and again, this one is usually big enough that it just needs 1 knot. If they pull through and you're putting them in here and they just pull right through, just add another knot onto it. We're coming up into this tuning peg here. Give it some slack. So I like to put my hand here, and that's about the slack that you're gonna want. And once we get a little closer, we can make sure the string is in the correct groove of the nut. And mine is slipping a little bit, so I need to cut that nut slot a little bigger so that string will fit, because it keeps slipping out. So we're gonna cut that a little bit big. Let's see if I can do this without taking the string off. We'll just keep going. And then again, I'm not worrying about tuning it yet, and I'm also not worried about getting these actions yet. I'm gonna put all the strings on and then see which part I need to adjust and where. So we'll get all our strings on first. I'm gonna try just 1 knot. We'll see if that's good. It's kind of pulling inside a little bit as I get some tension on here. It might hold, we'll see. But if it pulls through, I'll do another knot. Now this one is going to go up all the way to this top tuning peg. And this time we're coming again around the inside, but then looping around this direction. And again, we're going to give it some slack as we go to tighten this up here. Go on to our last string here. Now this last string is a really thin one, so you got to be careful. This is usually the one that breaks. And so don't do too much tension on it at first, because it's very easy to over tighten and then snap it. This one for sure, you're gonna need 2 knots, maybe even 3 knots, depends on the thickness of this. Okay, doing our last peg area here. Give it some slack. Okay, now again, before we tune this, what we're looking at is a couple things here. We want to look at the action. It's just how high above the strings are above the fretboard. And we're looking at it in a couple places. One just on this upper part here, and then the other part is around that 12th fret area around there. And so you don't want it too high. So my action right now is just a little high. So I'm looking at here, where the string's at, to here, and it's just a little bit high at the nut. But if I'm looking down here more, it's definitely a lot higher, and we want that string to be more like that height above. It's kind of hard to see on camera there, especially out of focus, but we're going to adjust a few things. So if I need to lower it down here, I'm going to change the height of the saddle. I'm going to just sand that saddle height down. It's too high. If I need to change it up here, it's the nut. I'm going to cut those slots a little bit deeper for it to go down. Go through and play each fret just to see if any of your fret wires are too high, need to be filed down or shaped. So if I play this top string here, and then I play the first fret, it should be a different sound every time. So that one sounds pretty good. I didn't have any buzzing or other things, but again, I'm going to change the action height. It's just a little high. You can go through each string here. Now, if you did have some that maybe you hit one fret and then the next fret it's the exact same sound, you know that it's hitting a higher up fret or lower fret on one of them, and so we might have to do some filing and adjusting, and you can have me help you with that if you need it. So far I don't see anything that we have to adjust on this with the fret wires. I think I just need to get that action changed up, so we'll work on that a little bit and then tune it up and try it out. Okay, I drew a line where I want to trim my saddle, and I'll just come over and sand it. Watch your fingers, you don't hit your fingers on the sander. We'll just get it right down to that line. Okay, I just got back, just put my saddle back in. I had sanded the height of that. I had notched a couple of these slots on the nut bone just a little deeper, and I'm looking at my action now, and it does look a lot better. And then there's a whole slew of different tuning apps on your phone, or you can get a real tuner and tune it up, and I just barely did that. And one thing I noticed a lot was every time I would tighten the string up and then play the string, the tuning peg would kind of loosen on its own. So you do have to tighten these screws fairly tight. I had to tighten all these really tight, and then I went ahead and tuned it up. And you're going to notice that it will get out of tune really quickly when you put some brand new strings on here. And so you're definitely going to have to keep tuning it a lot. Once your strings get stretched out, then you don't have to tune it as often. We can now go ahead and trim some of these little little pieces that stick out. I'm just going to take some scissors and just trim off all the little excess parts of my string. And then same thing up here on this end, all these little loose ends, and it's up to you on how much you want to trim them. But we'll just trim them. All right, so we got our strings on. Again, just get it all tuned up and then enjoy. So it's already out of tune. I gotta have to retune it again. Okay, it's all tuned up. I don't know if I have any chords yet. I'm just learning. Got C, G,